Hey there, men. Mike Yarbrough here. Happy Truck Talk Thursday to you. Hope your week is going well. I want to talk today to you guys about imagination and the importance of it, and really the disappearance of it, and the sad time that we're in. It's interesting to me to know that just by looking at these statistics, that so many of my listeners here, so many of you are kind of in my age bracket, somewhere between the 30s, 40s years old. And you guys remember a time in America when life was different. You remember the 80s, you remember the 90s. Some of you remember times before that. And you remember when there was a strong sense of imagination in children. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about where that's gone. I want to talk about some of the issues that we have even in our school system and technology today that's eradicating these things, and what we can do about it as fathers and as leaders in our communities to help bring those things back, because I think it's necessary. But before I dive into this, I want to welcome any new listeners here to the Wolf and Iron Podcast. Men, I'm glad you're here. You know, the Wolf and Iron Podcast is all about helping you heed the high call that's on your life. And a lot of guys ask, what is that high call? I mean, that sounds right. That sounds like something that I'm drawn to, just but the words there. Like Wolf and Iron, I love those words, but what inside me is pulling me to this? There's a high call, I believe, on the life of every man. I believe it's put there by God. I believe that it's something inside us that says we ought to strive to be better than the status quo. It's kind of an internal meter. It's something that we feel called to from the past, men who have lived, who have led amazing lives. And it's a calling to be more than what we were yesterday, calling to be more than our parents were, calling to be more than what we see out there in the mainstream. To do away with the status quo, to set the example, to be the leaders and the husbands and the example setters for other people, and to be stewards of our resources, to be shepherds of our families, to be priests in a lot of ways to our families, to those we love. And so, guys, we're not going to do that by just going with the flow. You guys see what that looks like. And that's not going to get us there. We need examples of it. We need to talk about it. We need to be brought up in it. And with the fatherlessness that's just rampant out there, guys, we're just not having the experiences that we need to have as men. And so we need things like this. We need Wolf and Iron. We need other resources. Order of Man, Art of Manliness. Love those guys as well. Appreciate what they're about. So we need to work at it to become the men that we ought to be. And that's what Wolf and Iron is all about. The Truck Talk Thursday podcast is just me talking to you from my truck, if you haven't figured that out already. And I'd just like to share some thoughts with you guys without all the intros and the technical stuff that has to happen for a normal episode. So what's happened to imagination? What's happened to the kids of these days? You know, when I was growing up, I played with my toys all the time. I couldn't wait to get back home and play with my toys. And in order to do that, I had to make up a story between my hero figures, right? My G.I. Joes, my He-Man, the Voltron, the Transformers, whatever kind of toys I had at that time. And there was usually a season, right? Like sometimes I was a He-Man guy, and then sometimes I was a G.I. Joe fanatic, and I couldn't get enough of those guys. Other times it was Transformers or Mask. You guys remember Mask? Those things were awesome. And we used to bring these toys into our life, and I would just sit for hours, and I would just play with these toys. And it was sometimes, even in school, that's the only thing I could think about, was just getting back home and using my imagination to create a story, to create a world. And guys, I can't tell you how much that has served me as a man. You know, we think about it as kind of a childish thing, right? Just playing with your toys and whatnot. I still think very much in terms of creating stories and having an imagination, and what do I want to build, and what's it going to look like, and what are people going to say, and who are the characters going to be. I do that with my businesses. I do that with my family. I do that with my own life. And it's imagination, guys, is so critical, it's so important. And I see so few kids who have it these days. It is an absolute atrocity that kids these days, and now really, to be honest, adults these days, don't exercise their creativity, don't have a sense of imagination. They're not left in the kind of the world of mystery and what if and if only, those kinds of things. There's so many parents I know today too that, and I'm not knocking, this is a whole nother, I'm getting ready to talk about Santa Claus. Brandon McConnell and I, if you guys are interested, you can go back and listen to an Ask a Man episode where Brandon and I talk about this over Christmas, about should you tell your kids about Santa, should you, kind of pretend and all that kind of stuff. But so many parents don't even engage in imaginative play with their kids anymore, pretending that Santa Claus is real, or Elf on the Shelf, if you want to go down that road, which is a road that is crazy. Or the Tooth Fairy, or what have you, right? The Easter Bunny, all those things. And if there are any kids listening, I apologize. But a lot of parents don't even want to engage in that because they themselves have kind of lost the ability to just imagine. They actually feel that it's wrong, like they're lying to their kids in order to just get them to pretend. And, so many stories used to be based on just the imagination, fables, morals, fairy tales and those kinds of things were just imaginative stories that got a larger picture home, right? I learned a lot about conflict, playing with toys, believe it or not, once, well, of course it always ended in a bloody shootout, but at the same time I learned about conflict. I learned about playing, different sides of characters and things like that just through playing with toys. I spent my summers, until I got a little bit older, I spent my summers primarily outside playing around. I'd go wander the woods and throw rocks and take my BB gun out there and shoot stumps. I lived in the country, if you couldn't tell. Actually right by the Hatchie River. And so I would just go out my back door and I had a whole world to explore. And I know not everybody had that, but kids had imagination. Things like The Goonies, even Stranger Things, right? That's new, but it still kind of harkens back to that 80s time period when kids imagine things. This might be possible. Maybe our friend is still alive. If you haven't seen Stranger Things, you should go check it out. But that sense of imagination. So how do we get that back in our kids? How do we as dads help imbue that into our children? Well, one, we've got to remove the media, guys. We've got to remove technology. Now, I understand you and I, we used to get up, we used to watch Saturday morning cartoons, and we absolutely loved it. It was the one thing that we look forward to in the day. And we'd get our big bowl of cereal, and we'd come down, and our parents would shut up, and they'd leave us alone. And we would sit down, and we would watch 3, maybe 4 hours of cartoons. And I remember, oh my gosh, like the excitement I still feel right now. I remember one time, I was at home, and it was Saturday morning, and I'm watching cartoons. And it seemed like every Saturday I always had stuff I had to do, like after cartoons were over. Like I had to go clean up something in the yard, or mow the grass, or there was something I had to do. But I remember one Saturday, for some reason, I didn't have anything to do that day. And it turned out that there was going to be like an hour and a half long G.I. Joe movie special coming on later that day. So not only did I get a chance to watch all of my cartoons, but then I got to watch G.I. Joe later as well. And my life was complete. I think that would be one of the moments, like, they talk about when you die, and you kind of have flashbacks, maybe. That's one of the moments I'd want to go back to, because it was just pure joy. I mean, it was just absolute, I cannot wait to experience this. This deserves another bowl of cereal. Of course, if I went back now, I'd look at it and go, geez, like the picture quality was terrible. I can't believe I used to watch this stuff. But if I could watch it in HD and experience that as a child, it'd be wondrous. But the media today that our kids have, it's anti-imagination in most cases. They're not story building. It's just distraction. It's just constant distraction. It's just pulling them into distraction. Now, TV shows and stuff like that, cartoons, whatever, I'm totally okay with that. And obviously you're going to make your decisions about these things as well. But you've got to limit those things. Because nothing stokes the imagination like pure boredom. Just pure, absolute boredom. Time to sit and think. Which, for kids these days, it feels really awkward. It really, really sucks. I didn't like it even when I was a kid, and we didn't have that much stuff to do. But now, for kids today that expect instant gratification, they expect instant entertainment, all they have to do, all I have to do is push that button, and I can be transported to, who cares land. and not have to worry about anything, not have to think about anything, totally zone out, and have my brain be fed, and it feels good. I mean, imagine if when you and I were kids, if we could sit around and watch cartoons for 24 hours a day, there's a good chance that we would have done that for a good part of our life. But that didn't exist, at least unless you had cable and you didn't have parents. But you've got to take the media away, and you've got to start doing that really, really young. And it's going to seem strange to restrict it as much as you probably are going to have to do. Giving your kids an hour a day of media seems like you're just freaking third world country, and you're the worst parent in the world. Nobody, who else does this? Everybody has a phone dad. Everybody has a screen dad. Look, you're going to hear all that kind of stuff. But whatever it is, you've got to really, really pare it down and allow your kids to get bored. The other thing that I would recommend is story time, especially when your kids are young. And they can participate in this in their own way when they're older. But story time when your kids are young. And I don't mean just read a book to them. That's fine. You can read books to them every once in a while. But actually make up a story. When you're putting them to bed, engage in a story. Okay, where does this story take place? Ask them questions. What are our characters' name? What do they look like? And help build this world with them and then bring that story to life. It's not going to be easy for some of you when you're first starting out with this, if that's not your game, if that's not your jam. But it's going to be something that your kids are going to absolutely love, and they're going to learn to use their imagination. You can also do these kinds of imaginative building things through prompts of different kinds. Hey, here's a paperclip. I want you to see what kind of, doodles you can make using this as a shape. So you put the paper clip on a piece of paper, and they have to make, different things. Here's a turtle, here's a T-Rex, here's a whatever, right? And just get them to start using their imagination. You can find anything. Here's a cornflake, here's a whatever. Random things, and say, I want you to, make a couple doodles today. And you just make your own. Leave them out on the counter. Here's a doodle, right? Get them thinking, get them using their imagination, guys. And limit screen time. Spend time with them. Think of stories, imagine things, and just give them ways to experience and explore and think about the what ifs and use their imagination. They are going to be so far above their generation if they can do that. They're going to carve out for themselves a path of success that is relatively uncharted for their day and age. When they get to the point where they're able to be an entrepreneur, they're going to blow people away by what they come up with. And it's because you set a foundation in them to help them use their imagination. All right, guys, hopefully this is inspiring. I hope you guys are having a great Thursday, that you have a good Friday and the rest of the weekend. And I look forward to hearing from you. Always love your guys' feedback on these episodes. And so when you see something like this, post it over on Instagram or on Facebook or in a Facebook group. Make sure you go out there and kind of let me know what you thought about it. If you have a chance, go leave a review for the podcast. That's going to help other guys know out there that this is quality stuff, that this is the thing that they should be listening to. And it warms my heart and encourages me to keep this going on. Okay, I appreciate you guys. Talk to you next time.